You're listening to the Well Led Podcast. I'm your host, Kate Johnson, and today I'm joined by Peggy Mark, managing partner at Breakthrough LLC, to have a deeper conversation about vulnerability in leadership. In this conversation, we're going to talk about achieving balance, creating connections, and what this means for leaders navigating the many challenges to employee trust. Peggy is an executive coach and leadership consultant with experience in healthcare, organizational learning, and nursing administration. I worked directly for her about 10 years ago, and I'm happy to be able to say that she is still my mentor, colleague, and friend. Peggy, thank you for joining me for this first deeper conversation. I think beginning with kind of your thoughts on some of the notes that I've shared with you, specifically how we talk about vulnerability. I've chosen to define it as a choice to be exposed and open. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to have this talk with you, Kate. I always love talking with you. I find it so stimulating. And vulnerability as a topic of leadership is extremely important and rarely discussed. So I appreciate you bringing that forward and bring it forward to this platform for us to talk about. So when I think about vulnerability as a leader, my first thought as I think about it is people hate that word.
Yes.
That it's frightening to people. It isn't seen as a leadership skill in most instances that I've been involved in throughout my career. And when we talk about being vulnerable, people tend to like shut down and say, no, that's work's not the place for that.
Yeah.
So yes, I think it is about being open. I think it's about being authentic. It's about building connections. And I think you've said this is building those human to human relationships that are so incredibly important as a leader. Because as a leader, you must have followers.
Yeah.
And I know I will speak for myself. I've been in situations where I haven't felt like following. I haven't been
Yes.
motivated to follow my leader.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that vulnerability piece, I really, really think it's important to talk about because it puts us in a place where we can open ourselves up to others, and others then have permission to open themselves up to us.
Mm-hmm.
And you deepen your connection as a leader.
That's exactly right. Well, I appreciate kind of right off the bat how you're addressing the first question that I had shared with you. Is this the right place to start when we talk about leadership? And I think we have to acknowledge that there's a lot of sort of technical or administrative know-how that's important to leadership. But as I shared in the first episode this month, the job description stuff we're going to set to one side. What we're focusing on are those more universal, essential aspects of leading well. And I personally think that you start with, am I aware of myself? So am I open and honest with myself? And am I vulnerable enough that people feel they can trust me? So this is what I think is the logical starting point. And I'm curious if there's any place else in terms of traits or skills or experience that you think should come first.
I had to think about that because even myself, when vulnerability, I have some sort of an emotional reaction to that, which I recognize. And so I asked myself, as you had asked me that question to think about it, should it come first? I think it's a great thing to come first. It's so much part of self-awareness, which is such a critical aspect of being an effective leader.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the part that we tend to leave out. We say we know yourself, become self-aware, learn how to be authentic, etc. But without talking about how do we open ourselves up to that level of discomfort a
Hmm.
little bit, take that risk of being vulnerable, I don't think we can take the next step.
Yeah.
So I think it's a perfect place to start.
I have experienced you as somebody that it's safe for me to be who I am, to challenge and to be vulnerable with. And I'm curious, how did you learn the lessons that got you to the place where that's how you approach your employees and your teams?
As you asked that question, it's interesting where my mind went first.
Okay.
So where my mind went first is not to my career, but to my childhood,
Oh,
to my upbringing,
yeah.
to how I became who I am.
Hmm.
And I would say I'm a third child in a family of four kids. Um, I was a peacemaker sort of from the start, where there was conflict. I was actually and still am to some extent very conflict adverse. And I just want things to be okay. And I want everyone to be okay. That's sort of it's one of the things I like about who I am, and it's one of the things that has really gotten in the way
Mm,
of who I am
yeah.
and of my leadership. Um, so I've had to do a lot of work over my career, very intentional work to understand myself and understand what my vulnerabilities are in terms of um, relating to people and
Mm,
helping people understand what their job is, all the things we do as a leader, helping them understand their job, what the expectations are, how I support them. And I learned a hard lesson over the years, which was because I'm such a peacemaker, sometimes I wasn't giving people what they needed. And it sounds a little bit like I'm going in the wrong direction, but I'm actually not. Because what I had to realize, that self-awareness, looking at myself first, was I had to realize that my default was not my best leadership skill. My default at making you feel good and bringing peace to the situation was not leading. So, very first thing I had to do was really look at myself. So, over my career, I watch people very closely. In my mind is always, I want to be like that. I don't want to be like that. If
yeah.
I've learned more from leaders who have not been vulnerable leaders than I have from those who have. Those are the things that stick in my mind, that where I think to myself, I never want to do that to someone. I never want to be perceived as I am perceiving this person right now. So a lot of what I've done is intentional of growth, professional development, a lot of work on that awareness and authenticity side of myself, but also in just observation and my um, need, I guess, to not hurt people in the process of being a leader. And I say that having not thought that through, but I say that because I don't ever think a leader has to hurt people.
No.
And so in that being a basic value of mine and also being naturally sort of a peacekeeper, I've had to learn how to balance my leadership skills, what we call those hard skills, right? I don't like hard and soft skill language, but
No, because it's inaccurate for starters.
it's so inaccurate. But of the the budgets, the balance sheet, the scheduling, the strategic planning, all of those things that we do, and the strength of being able to relate to people are equal. They're both strengths. And so I have very intentionally learned how to balance those over my careers. I've made lots and lots of mistakes, but I also think that um, I've helped people with my ability to
Hmm.
balance those skills.
I can confirm that you have. Not to turn this into a total love fest, but I know that I'm a better leader having worked for you.
I so appreciate you. Thank you, Kate.
Well, yeah, thank you. Very much so. Um, yeah, one of the interactions I've been thinking a lot about as we've been leading up to this recording time is the day that I came to work, not physically sick, but emotionally unwell. I have an anxiety disorder. I'm not shy about sharing that. And I was having a pretty bad episode, but I was scheduled to teach a class that day
Mm.
when we were working
Remember
together
that day.
in the learning function. Um, and I was at I probably should have just called off work, not even made the effort of coming in because I couldn't stop crying and couldn't articulate things. I had no choice but to be open because the emotion, the physical expression of what was going on in my system was beyond my control. And it was scary, it was embarrassing, and you made it safe. I didn't even have to ask. You saw the situation and told our department assistant, we're going to reschedule this class. You told me to go get yourself collected, go clean up if you can. We're going to make the announcement. And it wasn't, hey, Kate's having a meltdown. It was, Kate's not well. We're going to need to reschedule. And when I came back to my desk after sobbing in the bathroom for 20 minutes or so, you had gone and gotten me a coffee and a scone from the building coffee shop. And I took a picture of it because it just made me feel seen and valued and safe. And if I had tried to keep my chin up, rub some dirt in it, and hadn't been vulnerable, I would have never had that gift from you. This thing that you're fighting that feels like a flaw in you doesn't make you less valuable to me or the team, is the message that gave me.
Thank you for sharing that example. And to articulate what I'm thinking, just have to give me a second
Mm-hmm.
here, is I'm not good at being vulnerable. It's hard for me to be vulnerable. You probably know that about me too.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I've had to work hard at it because I'm fairly protected,
Mm-hmm.
self-protected.
Yeah.
So I love hearing you tell that story because what it tells me is that in spite of myself and in spite of my sometimes a lot of reluctance to make myself vulnerable, I've been successful in creating an environment where other people feel they can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's half the battle. You know,
Yes, it is.
it's half the battle. So I so appreciate you saying that, but it's really important to realize that that vulnerability is a two-way street.
It is.
It's creating the environment where people feel safe with you as a leader and also um, yeah, creating the environment where I feel safe. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a harder thing for me to do. I keep my walls up um, pretty regularly.
Yeah.
And I've worked hard to bring them down and actually admit. It isn't admitting when I've done something wrong. I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that we do need to admit when we've made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And there's tons of research about why that's a good idea to admit those mistakes and how that helps us as leaders. And um, but I think it's more of an emotional vulnerability to me to for you. If I were you and I had been in your situation, I don't know that I would have allowed myself to be as vulnerable as you allowed yourself to be.
In those situations, I haven't had a lot of choice because it's associated with a mental health condition. And it's very humbling. But the lesson I've learned is that most people respond in those moments in the way you did. You get the gift of people caring for you. So it makes it that lesson that I've learned that, hey, if I'm just honest about the fact that I'm struggling, by and large, I'm going to get care in response from that. It doesn't mean I have to go into detail. It doesn't mean I have to make a big deal of it. But I learned it because I didn't have a lot of choice. part of the reason why I am a proponent for it is because I know the benefit it gives in relationships, and that leaders, in order to be able to do that, to care for your people in this way, you can't just show up and expect them to be open with you if you haven't already set the stage for it.
Think about the concepts that the leadership concepts we're talking about, Kate, that you've just talked about when we're talking about vulnerability, because I'm the words going through my head are compassion and
Mm-hmm.
caring and authenticity and empathy and all the things that really make for a strong work environment and for strong leadership relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that you're pointing, yeah, that you pulled all of those together as you were just telling that story, because none of those traits, skills exist in isolation.
No, they don't. I say it's, oh, we start with vulnerability. There are a lot of places we could start, but I personally, I want to subvert, whether it's overtly or sneakily, a lot of the commonly held views of what leadership is. We don't start with command. We don't start with title. We start with, I care for you.
Yes, we
And
do.
before I can care for you, I have to be vulnerable, because you will not accept my care if you don't trust me.
I think that is the key right there,
Mm-hmm.
is that without a trusting relationship, we are uh, less productive, if you put that in business terms.
Exactly.
We are less honest in the work environment. We won't admit mistakes that need to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many downsides to not having trusting relationships in the work environment. And if vulnerability is one of the keys that brings us toward that trusting relationship, it's absolutely critical to
Mm-hmm.
pull into leadership training and development and discussions like you are now.
We talked about authenticity and fear. If there is a leader out there or somebody interested in leadership who has told themselves, I've never made a mistake, you're lying to yourself, or just flat out lying. And knowing that we're going to make mistakes because we're human, why not take advantage of your mistake making to learn, to put it into practice? So, what can I learn from it? How can I be different next time? And how can I not just own my part in it, but also offer myself forgiveness so that I can leave it in the past, not carry shame with me, and be credible and effective down the road?
I know you're I'm not going down this rabbit hole, Kate, but I know you're very much into storytelling. And when we talk about vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times we're telling stories.
That's exactly right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, we're telling stories about ourselves. I think about a big lesson I learned, and I think it has helped me be more vulnerable. And someone said it, and I just hung on to it for my entire career, which was, you alluded to this, like, I'm never the smartest person in the room. The minute I think that I'm the smartest person and other people don't have anything to offer to me, I've shut down a situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about vulnerability, that to some leaders feels very risky to not be the smartest person in the room, or at least to not pretend you're the smartest person in the room.
Right.
And I would imagine that most people have had that experience. When you think about the energy and the knowledge and the information and the ability to move mountains when you have a group full of smart people, small group or large group, and you're shutting that down because you have this risk aversion um, to not believing you're the smartest person in the room, you've just done potentially long-term damage to your team and your organization. So if we put it in very practical terms, um, one of the ways to overcome vulnerability, admit to yourself first and to the team
Right.
second, is I'm not the smartest person in the room. I don't have all the answers. I need you.
Yes,
And some people that's very, very difficult for.
it is. I like that you're leading us to what I think is a really important topic in this conversation. It's one, finding that sweet spot, that balancing point between being vulnerable and sort of overexposure. I'd like to be
Yes.
very clear that vulnerability is not nudity, right? You don't have to air all the things. You need to have your own emotional boundaries, and maintain those. You can still be private and be vulnerable, but it's also, what are the actions that go with vulnerability? Because it's not just what you say, it's what you do as well. And perfect example, I'm not the smartest person here. I need more ideas. Not just saying it, but then welcoming, staying curious, being open, and respecting when people speak up and give you alternatives.
I think that's exactly right. And if you know you're not the smartest person in the room, you're asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
If you think of it as asking for help, sometimes that shuts people down. It's like, nope, I shouldn't ask for help. I'm a leader. It's so funny what we do to ourselves in leadership.
Right?
Yeah. It's like I shouldn't ask for help. It kind of goes back to I call it a very old-fashioned, and you had mentioned this, Kate, the very old-fashioned leadership style of that great man theory.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And I call it old-fashioned, and I'm going to continue to call it
Mm-hmm.
old-fashioned because it's old-fashioned. Like we don't need, it doesn't work anymore because society has changed, communities has changed, organizations have changed. Just the smallness of the world and the amount of information has created this complexity that there is no one great person
Well, it
that
never
can have
worked.
all the
It
answers.
it never was the case. It was, and frankly, I think it was a tactic to position. I don't want to totally take us down this path, but I don't know that I've ever in this podcast or other settings talked about why it is so wildly problematic. It was a theory, whether consciously or not, is bad because it had this result of positioning white men as leaders and excluding everyone else. And we know that white men are not the only people who can or should lead. All the research about diverse teams, about the power and effectiveness of female leaders and executives, there is proof that the great man theory is a crock. Anytime we can tear it down and challenge people who say things like, well, they're just a natural leader, I think that just does good in the world.
Yeah, I love that you just call that out,
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that it takes a team. It takes a team of people
Right.
to lead. I think you were one of the first people that you had said it very, very clearly to me at some point in my career early on when I first started working with you. And I think it had to do with wearing different hats, but it was all about perspectives. And that really stuck with me because when I believe I'm not the smartest person in the room and that it does take different perspectives. And I got to a point, this is another practical point. I got to a point where if I would call a meeting together, um, I would bring people together. Time is critical in a work environment. People want to know why they're at the
Mm-hmm.
meeting, what's the agenda, how long is it going to last, etc. But when I called a meeting and I would say, go person to person and say, this is the reason I invited you to this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, it's because I need your perspective. This work needs your perspective. This organization needs your perspective. And I have one perspective. It's mine. I can't have yours, Kate. I can't have
Right.
someone. else's perspective. I don't live their lives.
Yeah.
And so for me to look at that vulnerability again of saying, I need you and I need your perspective, that is a very practical way. And I learned a lot as I did it. And I give you a lot of credit for helping me get to that
Thank you.
point of putting it into practice where yeah, you taught me a lot about, that need of perspectives, and you said it in a way that stuck with me, but then also the ability to just say, and this is why I'm inviting people to this meeting, because I value their time, I value their knowledge, I value their perspective. And so people felt good about that.
Even if you are the smartest person in the room, and that does happen sometimes, it doesn't mean that you're the best person to be in the room or that you know everything or you have all the answers. So be smart enough to take other things in. Because really smart people recognize I can still learn.
Continually, you
Mm-hmm.
can still learn. Yes,
Yeah.
good
So,
point.
so we've talked about moments of vulnerability that we've experienced as colleagues. A little bit about some of the practical bits. I kind of want to back up a bit and discover together what it is we think prevents us from being vulnerable in the workplace most commonly. Fear, risk aversion, but
Yes.
those
Yes.
are those are correct, but I feel like they're easy answers. It's fear of what?
I think it's really important to talk about that because if we talk about fear, it's very real fear. It's not unfounded. And so I think it's really important to talk about it. I want to just say one thing in my answer because it goes back to something else you said, which is part of the reason is because there's a lack of understanding of vulnerability versus oversharing.
Mm-hmm.
And um, if if I think about making myself vulnerable and I don't know exactly where those boundaries are, um, it's too scary,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. And you shouldn't put yourself in that position where you have to understand the difference between being vulnerable and being and really oversharing. It doesn't mean it's a hard thing for me to actually articulate. I can see it when it's there. I know what it is. Um, I know where my boundaries are, but I think it's something people need to think about when they're thinking about allowing themselves to become vulnerable. It doesn't mean you share absolutely everything in that situation. It doesn't mean that every emotion has to come out on the table. It's like any other situation that you are in as you evaluate the situation you're in, the environment you're in, who you are with, what's the culture of this particular meeting or organization,
Mm-hmm.
what's appropriate, because you do want to stay within the bounds of organizational and workplace appropriateness.
Yeah.
So you have to understand those things and be very clear to what level of vulnerability am I willing to go and where have I shared too much?
Yeah.
And so it's going to be different situation to situation to situation. There are different people I would have, low levels of vulnerability with. There are other people I would have high levels with.
Yeah.
So I think understanding that it's scary. That's one of the things I think is scary for people.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think that fear, though, fear of people taking that information and using it against me,
That's what I was going
that's
to say is not
real.
every person or every environment is safe.
Yes.
And being able to discern that and what it looks like for you, it, it's easy to get it wrong sometimes.
It is. And I'm sure we've both gotten it wrong.
Mm-hmm. We're probably
And
thinking of some of the same people and circumstances.
I think we are. And but then not letting that shut you down. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
never going to do that again. It's like I didn't assess that situation
Right.
well enough. I wasn't accurate in my approach.
Mm-hmm.
So taking that personal responsibility to say I'll do that differently in the future.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I'm going to repeat you. You have to be prepared for the fact that you're going to get it wrong sometimes. both
Yes.
directions, right? Sometimes you're going to be too vulnerable. Vulnerability may not be the right approach in the moment. And other times you're going to be too guarded and
Hmm.
lose the opportunity that could have existed in a moment of vulnerability. You're not going to be perfect is the thing that I know is very hard for people that want or who do lead to accept.
That we're not going to be perfect.
Never.
No.
Yeah, just does not happen. But you mentioned this earlier, and it's a point I want to highlight. There's so many examples of people trying to appear invulnerable where it falls flat, it's not effective, it shuts people down. We can take those and learn from them. So, you listener, if you've worked for somebody that you felt like, oh, I can't get to know them, they're not open with me. Well, what does that mean for you and the people you lead? If there's a public figure that you think has missed the mark on personal ownership or admitting a mistake, well, what can I learn from that? You don't have to make all the mistakes yourself.
Yeah, watch and learn.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely true. I had an experience recently. I was talking to a young woman who's in nursing school, and she's gone through a little bit of family trauma
Mm.
recently. And I don't know if this is a good example, but I think it is. She made herself vulnerable, and she was not going to get a paper in on time.
Ooh,
And so she went to her faculty member and she explained that to her. She said, I need a couple of extra days because this is what happened in my family. It was pretty traumatic, but this is what happened in my family. I haven't been myself. I haven't been able to concentrate, etc. And her faculty member said, get it in on time or you fail. So your expectations of what that vulnerability is going to bring to you need to be fairly open because you can't control someone's response to you.
yeah,
And I felt so bad for her when she gave me that story. And at the same time, she didn't say, I'm never going to do that again. We talked about it. She said, in this situation, I didn't know that's how she would respond to me. I would have approached her differently. Um, it was bad and it hurt, and now I have to retake a class. I mean, she stuck to her guns, but yeah,
that
it was a
is,
learning for her and gave us something to talk about and learn from.
that's going to be a good nurse,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Like that type of personal leadership, personal accountability, and courage.
yes, courage.
Yeah. Because we have to remember vulnerability is not weakness, it is bravery. When we expose our weaknesses, we are taking a risk. And it's okay if you feel afraid because you are wired to keep yourself safe. So I feel like when people are willing to say things like, I've had this horrible event, I need time, we should, I feel like the response should be to honor that, even if the answer is no.
Even if the answer is no.
The point is, she felt the fear, she did it anyway, and she's going to do it again the next time.
And I think it's that she's going to do it again because many times, and I have done this and at points in my career or new environments that I'm in, where it's just like, I will never do that again.
Yeah.
When I've gotten shot down and or felt like I made myself too vulnerable. I talked myself out of it
Oh,
eventually
yeah.
and get back to who I am. But it's hard. It hurts. It hurts and it's frightening.
I'm going to circle back to kind of where we started with some of those stories of our relationship where vulnerability makes us ready to receive the gifts of care that people have for us.
It's a beautiful way to look at that.
I've been thinking a lot this month as I'm thinking about vulnerability of the movie Inside Out and the character of sadness,
Oh yeah.
right? The lesson that Joy sees is that we need sadness because that's when help comes. When people see our sadness, when they see that we have a need, help arrives for us. Embracing the sadness, acknowledging the fact that I'm imperfect, I'm flawed. There are so many gifts and joys that can arise from that. And in a workplace setting, we need that too. We spend too much time at work to not have joy.
You think about your work environment and people coming into that environment with joy, how much more pleasant that is, how much harder
Right.
you're willing to work, how much more you can get done.
Yeah.
The success story I had that I
Oh,
can tell, I think I've told this story a million times probably, is being asked to go into emergency department as director when I hadn't had emergency department experience, and I had to make myself very vulnerable. The very first question I got as I started meeting with staff was, "What are you even doing here?
oh gee.
You don't have any emergency department
Oh my gosh.
experience." And what I said is, I'm here because of my leadership skills. I'm
Hmm.
here because I can help rebuild this team. I can help recruit more staff. I can help you create this environment that you want to work in, but I can't do that without you. So my skill is a leadership skill, team building, helping you build a vision. You're the subject matter experts.
Yeah.
You have to tell me what you need,
Hmm.
what you see as that this department needs, how your vision is of this department, and how we can get there. So we're going to work together and create this with my skills and your skills. And within 8 months, we did not have a vacancy rate for nurses, and we had rebuilt the administration and emergency room relationship that had gotten very tense when
Hmm.
a lot of things had kind of not gone well. And our quality scores went up, and our patient experience scores went up, and things began to get on the right track by the time they brought the new director in. The direction was the right direction. That was really hard for me, and it was definitely a lesson in the value of being vulnerable.
I love that as an object lesson for us, Peggy. It brings us kind of this nice coda to why start with vulnerability and not something like subject matter expertise. It's not
Yeah,
that it's not that your experience doesn't matter in this context. It's the essentials of leading well that matter. That if a nurse who has no experience in emergency medicine can go in and lead a department of those experts and clinicians, it tells us that leadership essentials carry the carry the brunt, like being able to listen, be curious, seek out information, put in the hours, all the stuff. That matters more than I know how to care for a trauma case.
for me, it was the biggest lesson of that experience, which was exactly what you said. My subject matter expertise in emergency room nursing doesn't matter. My expertise in leadership does.
Mm-hmm.
And that I had never really realized that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important topic
Yeah.
to be talking about.
Yeah. And I want to acknowledge there are going to be cases where you do have to know how to do the thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the leadership competencies, characteristics, and mindsets come first.
It's really, yes, job by job as to how much subject
Mm-hmm.
matter expertise you actually need. It's just the lessons that we learn through, you know, trial and error.
So much trial and error,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Peggy, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation.
Thank you for having me. This is always so fun to talk to you
Mm-hmm.
in any situation. But to really, as I said earlier, to talk about vulnerability, just not a topic we talk about enough.
Agreed.
And I do think that people just need to learn about it too. Like even in prep for this conversation, I read Brene Brown, Dr. Brown, like
Right.
She has this just wonderful articles on vulnerability, that are really helpful. So don't be afraid to go out and look and read and see what
Hmm.
other people are saying, because the topic is out there.
Yeah.
We just tend to keep it fairly quiet for some reason.
I
Yeah.
go back to the word vulnerability comes from the Latin for wound. So, of course, we're going to try to avoid getting wounded. The good news is, though, we're human and we may be flawed, but we can make choices, we can grow, we can change. So you can choose vulnerability and benefit from it.
And keep learning about it.
Yeah.
Keep learning about it. I learned a lot in this conversation, Kate, that I had perspectives and thoughts I hadn't had before about vulnerability as a person and as a leader. So
Well,
keep learning.
that makes my heart happy. And I can say the same.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us today for this conversation about vulnerability with the Well Led Podcast. If you found this episode useful, you can support the show by following or subscribing on your preferred podcast platform. It helps other leaders find these conversations. And if you're open to it, leaving a quick rating or review goes a long way. We'll be back next Tuesday with an episode about being effective as a vulnerable leader. And later this season, we'll dig into how leaders can create and sustain good humor on the job. If you want updates on episodes, resources, and upcoming offerings from 123 Limited, you can join the newsletter at any time. For more topics and perspectives on leading well, especially in the space where results and humanity meet, visit 123limited.com. Thank you again for being here.